Ladies and gentlemen, this is the state of the scene.
Yo, what the fuck is up, Warped Tour? The state of the scene at SOTS Podcast on all social media. Sam here with Marcos.
Every once in a while, something changes. And she's changing me. Do you follow?
Yeah, but I need like the melody. Give me the melody.
It's too late for me now.
I need you to legitimately
I am
sing.
altered.
No, let me get your singing voice.
It's not real. I can't do cursive.
What do you mean you can't do cursive?
I can't do cursive. It's Sleep Token.
Oh.
Can't do cursive.
Sleep Token's really the only person who can do Sleep Token, to be fair, right? And we don't even know who that is.
He's got
you know
a
what
name.
I mean?
He's
like
got
we
a
don't
name.
even know.
It's Vessel.
Yeah, but like who's Vessel? You know what I mean?
I am Vessel. You are Vessel. We are Vessel.
If I was Vessel, I would not be sitting on this fucking couch right now. I can promise you that, bro. I'd be swimming in that fucking... We sold out fucking Ox 2 Academia in Highland, North Britain in 3 minutes, bro. Fuck off. I would never... Like, Sleep Token gotta work another day in his life. He's so rich right now.
That's not how I expected Vessel to sound. Like
Richest
the non-singing voice.
Didn't you see that thing?
Vessel's not British?
The dude from Alpha Wolf posted that thing like a while back where he was like, we needed to like borrow a rig. And we asked Vessel, he was like, yeah, dog, that's cool. Sleep Token's not who you think he is. Sleep Token's like, they're like layers to Sleep Token, right? There's like vocalist Sleep Token, and that's like, that's meant to throw you off even further from like real Sleep Token. You know what I mean?
Tread carefully.
What do you mean?
Tread carefully, because there are people who are like well-versed in the Sleep Token lore right now who are going to come for you. And when they come for you, Sam, you won't be prepared.
Sleep Tokopedia or something like that. Not because the whole fucking Sleep Token thing is that like number one rule about Sleep Token is you don't say who Sleep Token is, right? So it's like they couldn't even, like, I can speculate all I want and they can't correct me. You know what I mean? Because if they correct me, then they lead me closer to finding out the truth. You know what I'm saying?
Or do they lead you closer, you think?
This scene's been worse off ever since Sleep Tokens dropped the album. Let me continue that thought. It just feels like there was something in the air when we were getting Sleep Token singles, like 3 of them every 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like there was just something. There was like an energy. You know, it was like there was like the whole fucking scene felt like it was alive, like with anticipation and with like. Nobody would shut the fuck up about it, you know what I mean? And now it's like, ever since, we've been like clawing and scratching to get that fucking feeling back, you know what I mean?
It's funny, because after hearing that album in full, they theoretically could have gotten away with just dropping singles, like 2 or 3 every single quarter of this year. And by the end of it, here's your full release. It's an album, go buy the vinyl, whatever. But they could have very well gotten away with just the hype all year long,
right? Like
no one would have stopped them.
Think about Sleep Token not even dropping that album, and just like every month they're completely owning the headlines, right? Because nobody's fucking missing that drop, right? Everyone's gonna have a fucking opinion on it. And by the way, for those of you who have heard that album, you know there were fucking 8 more singles on there that you could have.
That's what I mean,
right? You could just
They could have gotten away with it if they really wanted to.
All right, first thing I do when I find out who the Sleep Token guy is I'm like, we got to talk about your release strategy immediately, because like you've got everything figured out but that. All right. Did you fucking do anything this week? Like, I don't know. Did you have a single fucking life update you want to share with the world?
I watched Jaws for the first time.
Is this because I told you I watched Alien for the first time? You were like, I got to one-up you?
It was pretty good. That Steven Spielberg guy, he's got the right touch.
I just had a wild thought.
He's pretty promising.
Spielberg's all right. I just had a wild thought. Crazy that we have a Jaws song from Ice Nine Kills, but do not have an Alien song from Ice Nine Kills. Just realized that right now as I was sitting here. And Alien's fucking...
It's got to be coming. It's got, especially off the news of aliens existing.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? So you gotta ride that wave.
Week.
You gotta ride that. You gotta think Ice Nine Kills was in the studio this weekend. Being like, we gotta ride this fucking wave.
They smash the glass in the RV and press that red button, and the whole thing, like Transformers style, just turned into a studio.
You know what would be the funniest fucking thing in the whole world? Like, literally the funniest fucking thing that could ever happen? And it's not going to sound like it early on, but hear me out. Ice Nine Kills get robbed. And Spencer Charnas does that thing where they're like, fuck. They like tweet out, somebody stole my laptop with all the fucking songs on it. And then like 6 months from now, you get like a new song from a band and you're like, all right, man, you know, it's a little weird to get a song about Smile. You know what I mean? It's like from Memphis Mayfire. Like, this is fucking crazy right now. You know what I mean? It's like Ice Nine Kills are they're unrobbable.
So where I thought that is a funny thought. What I thought you
know what
were
I mean?
doing, where I thought
Rob
you were
Sleep
going,
Token, though. Rob the fuck out of that, bro. Run with those songs. You'll be rich.
where I thought you were going with that was that, like, Spencer would have to go on Instagram and list out everything that Ice Nine Kills lost and are now searching for, and it's like 7 clown horns, 4 fake chainsaws, a tricycle, a shark costume, and like at the very end of the list is like all the serious stuff where it's like, yeah, a guitar, 2 mics, a suit, Versace.
Right. If anybody sees this inflatable shark costume, please call.
If anyone like starts suddenly just decorating their yard for Halloween this year, give us their address now.
Quick aside, congratulations to Dan Sugarman for beating cancer. I was very happy to see that this week.
Yeah.
Very uplifting. It's nice to get some fucking uplifting news in this scene every once in a while with the amount of bullshit we've been in. Anyway, did you like Jaws?
It's a slow burn.
You got a hot take right now?
It's a slow burn. No,
you
it
got a
was
hot take
fine.
40 years after the fucking movie dropped?
It was fine. I think the coolest thing about Jaws is that they do a really good job of not showing that shark.
Sure.
Until they do, and then it really hits. And then on the contrary, you've got fucking Meg 2 coming out next week.
Right.
And that entire trailer is just shark.
Too much shark.
Jason Statham shark, and it looks like absolute garbage.
Yeah, precisely.
Just like that first one was. And that's not a hot take. It shouldn't be a hot take.
Less shark in your shark movie.
Not this podcast. Not a safe space for Meg fans. Get the fuck out of here. We don't want you.
No, Meg is trash. I'll go one step further. Anything that Rainn Wilson has been in since The Office has been an absolutely fucking unbearable film. I do not know what happened there.
I don't give a fuck about spoilers for this movie. Did he survive Meg 1? Is he in Meg 2?
I don't remember. I know obviously Statham survived. Spoilers. Besides that, cannot remember a single fucking thing about that movie. As always, every link you need is in the description of this episode, including our socials, playlist, merch, and Discord. Subscribe to us on YouTube at SOTS Podcast YT and leave a thumbs up if you're watching the video version of this show. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave 5 stars. And if you want to support the show, consider becoming a patron for early access, stickers, Discord benefits, producer credits for video content, and the ability to ask questions on the weekly show, like Melvin, who asks what our favorite track off of Travis Scott's Utopia was. Go.
I'd rather ask you, Sam, to name 5 Travis Scott songs off of any
In totality?
In totality?
Bro, well, obviously there's that one, which was really popular for a minute.
I'll give it to you. It's Sicko Mode.
Yeah, that one I know.
Mm-hmm.
That one I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good.
So the other 4 are...
The tracks we listened to while we were setting up.
The show, yeah.
Thank God... I think what was called like Schizo. The other one, the one you told me wasn't that great with
Bad Bunny
with the Weekend. Yeah. I haven't listened to Utopia. I mean, listen, I've been very honest on this show with the amount of time that I pour into listening to artists within our sphere of the fucking music scene. I spend 0 time listening to any artist outside of that, with like the sole exceptions of like Taylor Swift and The Weeknd.
Full transparency, as excited as I was to listen to every artist this week that dropped, more excited to listen to Travis Scott, looking forward to diving into Utopia after we record this show and I drive home from the studio and I get to experience that, and I don't know. I'm looking forward to it.
Melvin also asked what your porn name would be.
Does Utopia actually play here too, or no?
No, it doesn't.
It does if
It doesn't actually.
it's
not fun. It's not. It's a bad. No, it's bad.
It does if you like you're in that part of the porn world.
Like if you're into that kink.
Yeah.
All right, I guess.
I'm not.
What would my porn name be?
Come on.
Are porn names even that interesting anymore? I feel like porn names are just your name now, right? Like you just start an OnlyFans and it's just like literally like
Sam backward.
your fucking God-given name.
Mass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's your porn name is like your Twitter handle, right? So my porn name is State of the Scene.
SOTS.
Follow us, OnlyFans, the bottom fucking 10% all time. Brenna asks, "Are you Knuff?" I'm gonna be honest with everyone right now. I still haven't seen Barbie, and I'm starting to get pretty fucking annoyed with everybody talking
this
about
one's
it.
a pretty inappropriate question because real fans would know that we didn't see it last week, meaning we didn't catch this week.
Yeah.
And you can thank this fucking podcast because what would I be doing on a Friday night, Sam?
Jerking off.
Yeah, that Barbie. But
Watch.
no, I have to come and record this show every single goddamn week.
Precisely.
So I can't. I'm not Knuff. I can't see Barbie.
I'm just so fucking tired of pretending like I get the joke when I don't get the fucking joke. It's like if I have to see another fucking X about get it, new social media platform. If I got to see another fucking X about Mojo Dojo Casa House and not understand what the fucking context is whatsoever, I'm gonna be. And it's like, and it's fucking like the thing is now is that spoiler culture is so fucking dead that I've seen at least 90% of Barbie. I've just seen it completely out of context. So it's like I've seen the dance scene. I've seen this. I've had it quoted to me 7 million times. I have like 700 memes all in relation.
Yeah,
like
at some point Barbie
Margot
lays
Robbie
down in the
talking
grass.
about what this meant to her when she performed this particular. It's like I fucking like I know most of it. I just haven't seen it.
Have you seen anything in regards to Michael Cera? Because
Yeah.
I'm starting to get worried. Like he's just not in this movie.
No, he's in it. Like his name's Alan. And I've seen plenty about, like I've told you, I've seen this movie out of order.
But I'm kind of worried that like the part is like inconsequential to the movie because we're not getting any Alan memes.
You feel like Alan's not getting as much screen time as Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie, and that bothers you specifically? Yeah. As a big Cera guy?
Yeah.
Thank God it was Cera in this movie and not Jonah Hill. I think it would have been a weird fucking week for
It would have
everybody.
been a weird week.
Marcus, we listened to some albums.
The Breakdown.
Reborn Superstar by Hanabie.
What the fuck?
This is the Japan Outfit's second studio album released on the 26th of July via Sony Music. Reborn Superstar consists of 10 tracks, clocks in at 29 minutes, and is the follow-up to 2021's debut LP, Girls Reform Manifest, which is a really strong name. Real quick, couple of things. So Hanabie's name describes cold weather coming back in spring, especially during cherry blossom season, Sam.
We're getting name lore? We do this so infrequently.
We it's not often that we have to, I feel like.
Fair, that's a fair
also,
point.
it's not often that like there is a cool bit of like name lore there.
Holy shit, you translated all of the titles of the tracks? Let's fucking
so
go.
I did.
You from memory.
But
This is
with
so
that
fucking
in
crazy
mind,
right now.
when you translate this band's name in Google Translate, it also gave back Chilled Flowers. So like we're gonna take a lot of this track listing with a grain of salt.
Okay, so this is like an approximation of what the track names are.
Approximation.
Okay.
So, go easy on us. And then real quick, so this band is I don't know if they're self-described as this, but maybe it's something that the fans of this band have labeled them as, but Harajuku Core, which is a subculture movement encompassing a range of different looks, styles, and communities typically found in fashionable districts of Tokyo, which is essentially, I don't know, I interpret that as like streetwear, and boy, does this band look fucking cool. So, and they also sound cool, Sam.
This is going to sound crazy. and this is like a light criticism, right? Like I'm not coming into this album review like with like some like big negative takeaway or some hot take, but I do feel like this band really benefits from visual accompaniments to their songs, in a sense that I think you are better off watching the music videos than you are just listening to the album. And that's not the case with every band. That's often not the case with a lot of bands, to be honest with you. This is one of those bands where it's like you need to go out of your way to watch the music videos for these tracks, because I feel like they're really supplemental to the songs themselves, and they really make them significant. Like, they make good songs better.
Yeah, but I think that you can also apply that same thing to a lot of bands and say, hey, skip all the music videos for this one because it's only going to make the songs worse when you hear them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, alternatively, this is a case where I feel like Hanabie is one of those bands where their music videos like make their songs almost profoundly better.
Yeah, so not quite a backhanded compliment by any means. Like, it's one of those things where, like, hey, Hanabie is, like, they are sort of just really great performers. So being able to watch them play these songs really helps you appreciate the music that much more.
I mean, it's a combination of that, and I think this band's visual aesthetic and their presentation sort of works almost in contrast to the music that they're giving us in a way that I think really helps make it pop in a sense.
Yeah, it's really bright almost.
Well, it's almost like contrast, right? So it's like there's something about almost the like energetic, bright, fun tone to the videos, right? Just in sort of like their color palette versus what
sonically
is ostensibly metalcore music that I've, pretty much associate one for one with like bands dressed in all black at this point. You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
Darkness, even like spooky, bloody, all that stuff. This band almost like they like work like in contrast to all of that. So it's like there's a lot of ways that like aesthetically it's just like this band's visual style really raises all of their tracks. But all that being said,
real quick, I mean, you mentioned metalcore on that topic. This band does such a great job of infusing a lot of different sounds into their music, and this whole album, this band's discography, as I understand it, has a lot of elements of electronicore, hardcore, EDM, metal,
pop.
metalcore, all that, pop, J-pop. There is a lot going on, especially just within one singular track. Like, you get these really soaring, clean vocals that are swiftly followed up by like some like honestly brutal, like raw, like not gutturals or anything, but like the screaming on here is really impressive in a fun way. A lot of range, whether it be the singing, whether it be like some of the more like tongue-in-cheek spoken-ish sort of delivery.
What's impressive, I think, the most is that the way they sort of like traverse the spectrum, and they're able to go from these, like, it's almost like, let's use like our quintessential example of like Bring Me the Horizon. It's almost as if you took Ammo and you mixed it with Suicide Season and kind of saw what happened, right? And this band is able to navigate that space and combine all those elements without it feeling like they're disconnected or like the flow repeatedly just like stops and starts.
Yeah, like the tone, there's not like a lot of like really, it's not like
Their
peaks
style
and valleys or anything. It's like the tone stays pretty even throughout, even though they are throwing all of these different sounds at you.
Their style is almost more analogous to someone like A Day to Remember, who also, does a very good job of taking a softer pop, in their instance, pop punk element, and combining it with a much heavier like metalcore element.
Sure.
And Hanabie, I think, sort of traverses that in the same way. What's fascinating about this is that so we predominantly sing in Japanese, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I kind of like diving into an album like this that isn't worried about catering to me too much. So I'm almost forced to like find elements that I enjoy. I am quite literally forced to find all the elements that I enjoy, specifically outside of lyrics, which I you know, essentially can't, you know, make heads or tails of in any sense, right? Like they for the most part, outside of like when we're being cute and we say like
Fuck you,
what the fuck,
yeah.
or which like they come in really clean, and I like that this band has a sense of humor. But those are really the only times where the band is like giving a little bit in that sense to me, and it's not like I can really like look at those lyrics only and give some sort of review of like the writing on here. I kind of, so much of my experience with this record is like going off of vibes. You know, it's like, am I vibing? Like, does this have the right energy? Am I vibing with it? And it's like I can't come in here and be like critical of like any of the subject matter or the concepts we tackle or any of the things that we're singing about,
Yeah.
right? I just gotta kind of come in here and be like, was I in tune with like the energy of this album?
Right, unless you had like the album breakdown in front of you, where you know how some artists like will give you the literal track by track. Same as you, like you're going into this and it's just going off of vibes. And I part of me really likes that experience because it's different from the one we typically have.
Yeah, I really
where
enjoyed
we discuss a lot of like, you know, American English speaking bands,
almost 99.9%. Yes, almost exclusively.
and what it does let you do is helps you appreciate different elements of the music, like the guitar work and, you know, how bouncy that is at times, and the bass and things like that. And especially like the little details production wise, like there's a lot of like, you know, moments where you get police sirens or you get just like sound effects, right? And like it really helps you sort of focus on how textured all of the music is, as opposed to just like, I don't know, like a lot of the time, especially with most of the bands we listen to, like I hone in on that singer.
Well,
I hone in on the delivery. I hone in on the lyrics.
It's almost like there's, you know, if we were to hit this from like, you know, 4 critical points, one of them being like our breakdown of how we felt about like, the lyrical content. There's just like 25% of this that's just like missing, right?
Blank, yeah.
It's like I simply cannot have an opinion on it, right? But you're right. In that sense, it sort of forced me to go out there and be like, all right, what are the other things that I can sort of like lean into a little bit more? You mentioned the texture. That was a note I had made as well for myself. I think that like you said, that texture and their overall style sort of makes up for anything that would be lost in translation. I like this band's sort of inherent silliness.
Also, I'll mention that's by no means a weakness here. Like, just because we can't pull apart what the lyrics are or what they're singing about, like that's not a barrier to entry for us. Like it's something I actually really enjoy with this album experience. You know, I like sort of not
I've grown tired of the English
going
language.
on.
I'm over it.
I like not,
I'm done.
not knowing what's going on.
Bands
you
who
know?
sing in English, boring. Over it. I think the tracks that stood out for me the most were still the singles, though. Like, personally, part of me, I have to go now.
So,
go ahead.
Like, with the official release of this album and hearing that song in like context to this whole record, like I can easily tell you that is one of the best songs of the year by far.
It really just is like exactly the style of metalcore. And funny enough, I had a lot of what felt like metalcore made for me this week, and we'll get to that later. But this was the start of it, right? It was like I was listening to this and I was like, man, this level of electronicore that's just so buried in like creating this perfect build up to a breakdown. Like it's the very same thing. And
it's and like I'll
this
be
year,
honest,
this year is a gal early summer version.
Super Enter Shikari, like early Enter Shikari at times, in a way that it's just like, I don't know, it's fucking art.
There was a quote this week that from my understanding might have been taken slightly out of context, but essentially the headline that they ran with was like, Phil Bozeman of Whitechapel says metal's become too much of a joke. It's all a meme. Nothing like is taken seriously anymore. And it's like, I'm sure that there's a lot more to what they're trying to get across. But I guess when I think to myself of what my favorite bands have always been, they've always been the ones that have been a little sillier and they've had a little more fun with it and that they don't take the genre too seriously. And I look at a band like Hanabie and I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Like, this is dumb fun and I'm all over it. This is probably like a good 4 out of 5 stars for me. I don't think it's quite like perfect. I think that once again, the singles kind of run away with it, right?
There's 1 or 2 songs that go on like maybe 30 or 40 seconds longer than I would have liked them to as well. And granted, again, it's on the shorter side. I think it's barely over that 30-minute mark, but at the same time, like I think it could have been just a little tighter as well.
Yeah.
But overall, pretty happy with it. I think 4 is what I'm comfortable giving this at this time as well. But similar to like, we covered Kim Dracula recently. Like it's definitely going to be albums like that one and this one that I find myself gravitating to later on in the year when we're starting to look at like what our favorite releases of 2023 were. I can see this album coming back.
Okay, that's fair. Marcos, what else did we listen to this week?
Blackout by From Ashes to New.
Look, to you I'm different. It's cause I refuse to listen to all the stupid shit that you include in your opinion. I got enough issues trying to be a human living in a ruined system while I'm running from a crucifixion. You never get it. I put myself in this position and nothing you can do could ever worsen my condition. So why you try to play the villain? Understand that I'm the monster in my blood looking for a way to spill it.
This is the Lancaster, Pennsylvania outfit's 4th studio album released July 28th via Better Noise. Blackout consists of 12 tracks, clocks in at around 41 minutes, and is the follow-up to 2020's Panic LP. They also had a number of quarantine session EPs in between then and now. From Ashes to new album, Blackout. How are we feeling, Sam? I'll start. I've got some really, really mixed feelings on this one.
I'm gonna come in. I almost want to like a little table setting here.
Okay.
For people maybe listening to the podcast for the first time or even for a long time who aren't always sure of how we choose the artist that we want to listen to or cover or what albums. And it's generally kind of like a mix of a couple
names
things,
out
right?
of a hat.
So, sure. It's trying to be attuned with what I think people are interested in hearing our opinion about, artists that I see a lot of conversation about, stuff like that. But first and foremost, it's like, who are we interested in checking out because we think it could be good, right? Like, for the most part, if we know that we're just gonna dislike an album, and it's not an artist that we regularly cover, that we know people want to hear our opinion about, we steer clear of it because it's almost like not worth our time. From Ashes to New was one of those bands where I always feel like it appears as if they are attuned with something I would enjoy hearing. So I'm always incredibly optimistic about their next project because, like, at a surface level, I think their style of nu metal has a lot of potential, especially now where I feel like nu metal is having such a resurgence, but it's having such a resurgence in sort of a more underground sense where I think there's a real opportunity for bands who like, I'm not just talking about the bands who do the rock version of Linkin Park. I'm talking about the bands who actually sort of dive into the nu metal aspect of it that combines rap and combines rock, right? Because we get a lot of bands that are accused right now of just sort of like ripping Linkin Park, and it's like, you're 100% right, but they're ripping a very specific era of Linkin Park that doesn't do a lot of, it's like it's all Chester and no Shinoda, right?
They're ripping the Park, they're not quite ripping the Lincoln.
From Ashes to New, they've like completely like embodied this project to be influenced by bands like Linkin Park, right? Like so explicitly that band, right? Like I hear them and I hear who they want to be and who they want to sound like. Now, with all that being said, boy, did I not enjoy this record.
Additional small footnote of table setting on that one. I remember really enjoying Panic.
I think maybe I was more forgiving of Panic, and now that it seems like here's my ultimate problem with From Ashes to New, right? Like the issue with this project is that like they are an infuriatingly stubborn project that almost refuses to grow their sound in any capacity. So part of me feels like this is the same record as Panic, and I was okay with it then, and now I'm actually extremely bored by it.
Yeah.
And I probably have the same complaints as I had about that record, and I was more forgiving then, and doubling back and making those same mistakes over again, I'm actually pushed a little bit to the edge.
Yeah, so in
And I'm
theory,
about to fucking, you know.
it's a lateral move, right? Like it's just like, okay, well, they didn't get better or worse, but I think maintaining that exact specific sound from that last record makes this a regression, because I don't think that they really actually improved on anything that they had going on with Panic. I mentioned mixed feelings. The issue I have is, like you said, like on paper, a lot of this sounds great. It's like, okay, a band
Right, I come into this and there's potential.
They emulate Linkin Park really closely. I'm licking my lips. Like, that sounds awesome to me. You know, they do strive to incorporate more rap and not just rock in that sound, and it sounds good on paper, but in practice, this is a band that has essentially ran it back and made a worse record than Panic, in my opinion. And I mean that with all full due respect, because like you said, I did go into this album actually expecting to really enjoy it, and I walked away very bored with it, and I was very disappointed in what I had heard. But it's disappointing because, again, on paper, like everything about this I like. Like I will not lie that I have, like, there's an itch that I get frequently for this type of music, Sirius XM core, whatever you want to call it. Like, there's a place in my heart for that music, and I will shamelessly enjoy it at times. And other times, like this one, it feels like we are not pushing forward in any capacity. This is a record where, like, it's one of the first records this year where I thought to myself, like, this band didn't try one singular new thing on this record. Not a thing.
You can almost feel...
And it's not all bad. Don't get me wrong.
You can almost feel them turning their back on any opportunity to, like, experiment or, like, integrate something that feels fresh, and just to sort of, like, stick with the playbook. And I think the playbook feels old and dusty. This is a dusty record.
Pages are falling out of this book.
Let me be explicit with my issues. Do you want to...
Just, like, one more note. It's just, like... On that topic, when we highlight all of those things, the big thing that I walk away from this record with is just that, like, this is an album that this band is capable of a much better album, and they didn't write it. And honestly, like, beginning to end, you almost sit there when this album is over and done with, and you think to yourself, like, yeah, no, I could see this being exactly the record they set out to make. And it's for that reason exactly that makes it so disappointing, because there's not a single risk on here.
But it's a little worse than that.
It is a little worse than
because
that.
here's where we sort of... lyrics continue to be a massive barrier to this band's forward progress. It's a lot of familiar feelings expressed in the simplest manner imaginable, and it retreads familiar phrases ad nauseum. The writing's a brick wall to entry if you're looking for anything with, like, a modicum of complexity in how it delves into any of its subject matter. It is quite honestly a poster child for the worst of modern rock writing.
Yeah, and it is certainly a little worse than expected. Like, there's a couple of lines that really stand out, comparing, like, love to drug use or something like that.
So Hate Me Too for
typically-
me is a prime example of lines that just don't work. They feel like retreaded ground, and they make me cringe listening to them.
That's the song with like the cocaine line drop,
Let me read
right?
you. Let me read you. I wish I had a clue, because you're like a bad tattoo. Yeah, I was stupid. Can't remove it. Now I'm stuck with you. I wish we would have known, because we're going up in smoke. Just strike the match and burn our backs. Burn down this broken home. And it's like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, can't remove a tattoo. Going up in smoke. Broken home. I just like, they almost feel like chat GPTing lyrics for a new metal song and pulling things that have worked in other songs in years prior and coupling them all together in like a verse. And it's infuriating, because what I feel like this band does is they say a lot throughout the course of this record and never once say anything of real true depth. It's just all surface level. It's things are bad, life is hard, love is rough, right? You know,
numb.
your love is like a draw. You know, like it's
Yeah.
just like things that like you can close your eyes and you can complete the lines before the band does, right? Like, you know, the rhyme scheme before it even you're 3 lines ahead of this band every song.
Those last 2 words is the exact issue with this record too, because it is every song. Because I can excuse that for the most part. 2 or 3 songs, maybe it's like the lead singles, the ones that we expect to get the most
You
amount
have
of
some
traction.
filler on a record. Fine.
Right.
It happens.
Right.
Right.
But like, it's every single song on here where it is that same exact approach, lyrically, melodically. Again, it's not like there's some decent, like, I really like certain parts of this band. Like, I think their vocalist is really solid.
Vocalist is solid. Not particularly flashy, but solid.
Yeah, but
Same with the instrumentation. Not particularly flashy, solid.
But that's what I
But you're
keep coming
pointing out
back
the
to.
secondary, even bigger issue here is that this band does not excel at any singular thing to help mask their flaws.
But that's what I keep coming back to, is like, I don't know why, because I think that they're capable of it.
I do too. I have speculation as to why it could be, but ultimately I think it's just the band's decision. Like, this is how the band chose to present themselves. This
And-
is the record they wanted to put out, right? Like,
And
I have
there's
to
gonna
make
be a
that
lot of people-
in a sense, I'll credit the band and make that base assumption,
Yeah.
right? That this is the record they wanted to put out, and essentially what they did is they put out a record that's almost like bland enough that, and we've talked about these records a lot, it can capture as wide an audience as possible.
Right. What I won't do
Relate
is
to
not,
everybody by never being specific
I
about
won't
anything.
not acknowledge that this is gonna be the perfect album for a lot of their fan base. A lot of people are gonna eat this one up. It's got a couple of okay songs for me, but that's the problem. It's just it's not okay. Like, it's just not a good record.
It just feels bland. It just feels bland across the board. And like I said, if this band were to really excel at any one thing, then I would find myself latching onto it in a way that I could excuse aspects of this record that I felt did not live up to its standards. But the problem is, because everything is just pretty good, the flaws then are almost sort of like more deeply illuminated, right? There are some aspects of this band that's fun, right? Like, I enjoy a song like Monster in Me, which is probably like the closest we get to like having a modern flow, you know? Another thing that I think is difficult about this band is that their style of rap immediately feels dated. And I think if the writing was strong enough, if the lyrical content was stronger, you might be able to mask that. But because it isn't, it makes it stand out even more. So ultimately, you have a band who's like doing everything just good enough for the most part, but not so much so to mask the things that they're doing poorly. So you just end up with sort of a mixed bag of okay across the board, right? So yes, there's 1 or 2 songs on here that are pretty good, right? For the most part, though, it does not make up for the 10 tracks that I find sort of bland. It doesn't help that I feel like I had this whole record figured out 3 tracks into it.
Yeah, it doesn't help that this record's also probably 3 tracks too long.
We bring in one feature that I don't think really brought anything to the table.
Maddie gets really lost in that track. Maddie
Agreed.
Mullins of Memphis Mayfire.
And I don't think that that's a voice that... This is almost where you'd want them to bring in someone who's like maybe slightly more contrasting to their
bring in
style.
fucking like Claudio from... I can't believe I just said Coheed and Cambria.
That's a fun thought. I feel like where this band really would have excelled is if they brought in more hip hop acts to help them.
Sure, right.
I think a feature from someone like Dropout Kings would have like helped a lot here. I think that that's exactly the type of artist who I think would come in and show me like sort of like bring the necessary like modern flow to this band that would really help push a song over the edge, right? Or alternatively, you go big and you look at other Octane acts and you say, hey, can I get Chris Motionless on here? Can I get Noah Sebastian on here, right? Can I get Spencer Charnes, you know? Like, these are the artists that, like, you see pop up everywhere. Well, maybe not necessarily everywhere, but they're so popular that, like, by virtue of their name simply being on the track listing, it's really going to, like, make me excited, right? Mm-hmm. You know, like we were talking about a few weeks back, that Word Alive track listing, and it's like just looking at it gets you excited. I'm not really at that stage currently with Maddie Mullins, who is a vocalist that I like well enough, but, you know, it's been a minute since, like, seeing Memphis Mayfire's name pop up on a track listing really, like, pushed it overboard, right? I think that you touched a little bit on how, you know, maybe their fan base is really happy with this, right? Like maybe they are catering to an already established base and hoping that that's enough, with also the promise that if these songs have enough overall broad appeal that they can find more like-minded individuals to jump into the band.
Yeah.
And like they've really maybe simply established with this record that they are not in any sense interested in catering to someone like myself and my tastes.
Right. Like, I'm sure that this album will not flop by their own projection of, like, how many album sales they'll have, how many streaming numbers they'll get, whatever it might be. But, like, outside of that, I don't see this gaining them many fans who aren't already invested in this band.
You almost wish this band would do something polarizing so that you would have more to discuss. Like it would almost be more exciting. Like, love it or hate it, you would be able to, like, really dive into this band. It's just like ultimately this just sort of feels like a shrug.
They're capable of it. I remember, you know, it was by no means a song I really enjoyed off of Panic, but, like, they did try something polarizing on that album when they wrote about like a school shooting or something like that. Do you remember that track?
Sure. And so in that sense, you know, maybe they tackled subject matter that is a little weightier and they were willing to, like, get into something, you know, not that I think you should just write controversial songs for the sake of controversy, which I don't think is what they intended to do. But ultimately what this record has, it's like, I don't know how far I want to go, because ultimately what I think is that this record doesn't really have personality, right? It just feels flat across the board. And I don't think any one element is strong enough to pull it out of that, like, water that it's just completely drowning in, right? So for me personally, you know, this record is 1 star. I just, like, no aspect of it encourages me to really come back and revisit it in any way. And I find it hard to recommend over the vast majority of albums that I've heard this year. So personally, this is a strong not recommend from me.
For me, this is a 1.5 out of 5, and we move on to the next record of the week, which is Nublar by Exo Armor. This is the German outfit's second studio album, released June 30th via Krod Records, a label that's also based in Germany. Nublar consists of 11 tracks, clocks in at around 34 minutes, and is the follow-up to 2019's Death Bloom LP, which we did cover on this show, but fans might remember that it was originally released under the name of Coda. So band name change here, went from Coda to, again, Exo Armor. And we also got a fun little Spotify profile bio with the new name, which is just Exo Armor is a nuclear-powered attack mecha equipped with the most lethal sound system in the world, followed then by 3 nuclear emojis.
I like when bands have fun with their bio. I do enjoy that.
It is great. And I think that energy very much translates sonically to all of the music that is contained within this record. Again, 11 tracks on here. Do you remember much of the last record, though, Death Bloom? I remember liking it, but I do not remember Coda sounding much like Exo Armor.
Yeah, it's hard for me to think back about how I felt about that record because I have not revisited in a few years. All I remember is that
the artwork fucking slapped. It was neat.
Well, not only that, but I remember being immediately attached to them, which, you know, is one of those cases where it's like, I found a band, I feel like nobody had fucking heard of them, and I checked it out, and I had one of those moments where I was like, why is nobody talking about this? But you know what I mean? So it's like, I remember how I felt about it, but I don't remember a lot about the record itself.
So a couple of just interesting tidbits about this one.
Yeah.
The band, not the band name, the album title, Nublar, stems from the name of the Jurassic Park island, Isla Nuble.
Okay.
Which is also, it's pretty much a track. It's the closing track on here, Isla Nublar, on this record. So, album title based off of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
You're thinking to yourself, okay, that's probably the only dinosaur reference really going on this one. And then you look at the artwork, and it's a fucking T-Rex. And then you start looking at the track listing, Sam, and you've got Raptorin, you've got Asteroid, you got Rex, Pangea, and suddenly
you're starting to draw conclusions.
And you realize that you're sat here listening to Dino Core.
So you've named it.
I don't know if that's the final one, but I like it.
You wouldn't consider like a Jurassic Core?
Jurassic Core sounds tight.
Jurassic Parkour?
Less tight. So, and man, like, it doesn't even all immediately click for me looking at this. Like, I like Jurassic Park. I would not have been able to tell you off the top of my head what the fuck that island was called before today.
Right.
And then like, I'm looking at the names and I'm like, Rex, that's I like those 3 letters, R-E-X. I'm sure it doesn't mean T-Rex. And then you listen like a little more closely to the lyrics, and they talk about like sharp teeth, and the closing track on here talks about like hoping the gentle giants don't fucking step on you, and
I'm gonna be honest, I had a different experience. It was all fairly evident to me, like at the jump. Like, I knew this was dinosaur based.
I didn't realize it was a Rex on the album art straight away. I just looked at it and I was just like, that's a fun assortment of colors that I'm looking at.
It helps that I watched a music video as well where the vocalist was dressed up as a dinosaur.
What the fuck?
Yeah, like really embodying the spirit of this record.
God, I love it. Mm-hmm. And I guess all that to say, like, man, I found a lot to really latch onto with this band, and I ended up having a really great time with Nublar.
Yeah. This is metalcore that was like specifically crafted like deep in the recesses of like some laboratory explicitly to cater to me.
Right.
Like this is one of those cases where I need everyone to understand right here at the top, this is the type of metalcore that I really enjoy. Like, I'm a mark for this, right? I'm a mark for this nonstop tempo, EDM build-up, explosive breakdown,
Electric Callboy.
Electric Callboy. I was having this thought process the other day. You know how we were talking about like Blind Equation last week and how they sounded like early IC Stars?
Yeah.
I think so much of my taste in music could simply be extrapolated out to eras of IC Stars.
It's the IC Stars tree of Sam's music fandom.
Almost exactly the case,
Yeah.
where it's like my taste in music was explicitly what they were doing whatever year their album dropped,
And
right?
then it branched off for 2 years.
Right. And then all of the albums that I liked were
Yeah.
albums that were like slightly similar to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So now that like so much time has passed since we had that new IC Stars album, I almost find myself like latching onto every artist that reminds me of them in any way. And like you have an artist like Exo Armor who are in their New Demons era right now, which is my favorite era of IC Stars. And so when I listened to this record, it felt like it spoke directly to me. And it also does a little bit of the thing that we've talked about recently as well. It captures a certain level of trapcore, and it's a style that you and I have always felt strongly this scene has not dove deep into enough. So whenever it like pokes its head out, I'm immediately impressed. I was like, oh, these guys get it. Like finally somebody understands like what this scene is missing and how it can be wielded to great effect.
Yeah.
Combining trap and metal, I just think is a perfect marriage personally.
There's definitely times on here where the delivery reminds you of artists like Suicide Boys, Ghostmane.
Pangea is a great example.
Pangea is an awesome example, and that's like the exact moment that everything clicked for me. It's like 2-3 tracks in, and then the rest of this album flies by, and it's a fucking amazing time. Melodically, the closing track really stood out to me as well. So there's a lot of different things to latch onto. It's not just like they do electronic breakdowns really well, or it's not just like they've got cool lyrics about dinosaurs. It's like it's the full picture type thing, you know? It's like everything.
I think this band does a really good job of landing every single stylistic shift that they make on this record. Like they find their footing early on and cement it. And I think every big swing they make on this record is impactful, and it crafts some of the most powerful moments that I've had with metalcore all year, in that everything that it builds up to, it hits. So essentially it's a record free of any letdown. Every single time this band endeavors to do something, they nail it, right? And I think it does a great job of balancing its genre choices in a way that makes them like play off really great against one another. And it has like this European sensibility. You mentioned Electric Callboy earlier. And the way that it approaches those genres with that specific sensibility, it comes through in like the rap flow. It comes through in like the integrated electronic elements. And then like we go all the way back to the beginning, and the fact that this is a conceptual album based around dinosaurs or maybe extinction, and kind of like tying that into like your own personal experience as an individual. Like there's some nuance in there that takes what feels like a silly concept, but really like breaks it down into something that ends up seeming meaningful.
I think it's just a good backdrop for what they try to accomplish, right? I don't think it's an album that's just strictly about dinosaurs or anything like that. It's about being like lost and found or whatever, but the backdrop, or like the cool creative part of it all, is just all of this different imagery about dinosaurs and things like that.
Right. So
That
it's
really
like
help not ground it by any means, but like keep it interesting.
It's quirky and experimental, but familiar all at the same time. I think it really, you know, exceeded at everything it endeavored to do. And as I stated earlier, to be fair, I am a mark for this. This is a record that is custom built to appeal to my sensibilities. And in that sense, this for me is like a 4.5 out of 5. It really connected. Everything clicked. It was a really exciting listen. I feel like it rewarded return listens, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with it. And with all of that, it's hard for me to rate it less. I think that it does feel a little bit like one of these bands where I almost see more future potential than even what we're hitting, which is why I will create almost like a ceiling at where I'm willing to score it. I don't think it's maybe quite perfect, but it is one of those records that's like perfect for me.
Everything you just said, but that's why it's a 4 for me.
Okay.
Like, I do think that this band's actually capable of an album that is almost twice as good as this one.
Very promising future.
So I don't want to get too crazy with like a 4.5 or especially not a 5, because you're right. There's definitely a few, I definitely have a couple critiques to this one, but overall you have such a good time listening to this record that it's hard not to give this lower than a 4. So that's where I'm at. I'm at a 4.
Marcus, we listened to one last thing this week.
If We're Being Honest by Guardin.
Baby, don't forget, things aren't always certain. In due time, I'll come inside and hide behind the curtain. Lately, I forfeit, succumb to the surface. I've got quite the habit of telling myself I'm worthless.
This is the New York Natives' newest offering, which comes in the form of an EP released on the 17th of July via Acid Castle. If We're Being Honest, consists of 5 tracks, clocks in at around 13 minutes, and is the much anticipated follow-up to 2022's Creatures Together LP.
Do you ever have a chance to check that out?
I didn't. I don't think we covered it on the show.
We didn't cover it on the show. I listened to it on my own time. And really enjoyed it. Guardin's one of these artists who this is going to sound weird, but I really enjoy them as a palate cleanser, where it's one of these cases where like, it feels like very easy listening to me in a sense. And it's the type of thing that I've found I really like to go to after a week or weeks of listening to everything that we cover on the show. I look at artists like Guardin in particular, and it's been a lot of like that bedroom pop.
Take this week's lineup, for example.
Emo artists.
Guardin, out of every band that we're going to cover in news, out of every band that we've covered so far in reviews, they're probably the artist that has the least in common with all of those peers that we're discussing right here, right now.
100%.
Not that they are uniquely their own thing. They're very much uniquely, like, there is a corner of the music scene that is very much filled with artists like Guardin, but discussed on this show, Guardin is in less of that company.
I've accumulated like an incredibly massive affinity for the emo pop side of our scene. Think like Not a Toy, which we talked about last week as well. And truthfully, those are always the records that I swing back to when I have free time to listen to music that isn't dedicated to something that we're going to be covering on the show. They're always the first records I circle back to. Every year that like Chase Atlantic drops an album, that's always my first re-listen of the year.
Most listened to band of the year, yeah.
That as well. But all that being said, this is slightly different than what Guardin has done in the past, in that it's a little more folksy. It's significantly more acoustic.
Slightly more Midwestern emo. You've got this EP. It was produced by Anthony Del Grosso from This Wildlife. So you mentioned acoustic. That name should go hand in hand because that's what This Wildlife are. 5 tracks on here. Folksy emo storytelling. Sam, is it still up your alley?
This is so up my alley. I think it's one of the best things I've heard all year, truthfully. I know this is the follow-up to Creature, but for me, this very much feels like a companion piece to 2021's Things Could Be Worse EP, which I believe was in my top EPs of that year. If there is a conceptual nature tying both EPs together, I don't know that I particularly pulled it through. I think I have like shots in the dark of ways that I think that does feel like a continuation of that EP.
What are they?
In that the EP from 2021, Things Could Be Worse, was this really interesting story about like an individual stopping like a drifter or like killer like in their town.
It was a really creepy story, honestly.
Right. And I feel like this follows that quote unquote hero, this new EP, and sort of like dives deep into their psyche. But I don't know really that like they're so tied together that you would necessarily benefit from listening to one and then the other. But again, that's all just sort of like speculation. Ultimately, how I felt about this EP is that Guardin does such a good job of like just creating this beautiful poetry with every single word they speak, and every single line they write feels well considered, and they're do an incredible job of like perfectly capturing the feeling of the character that they're presenting to you in their experience at like an emotional level, and how they're able to sort of like verbalize all their emotions and the very deeply rich lines that are crafted to sort of like help you exist in their headspace. I just think is I think Guardin is just a remarkable like songwriter, like from a lyrical point of view, and how those lyrics translate to their vocal delivery and how they're able to sort of deliver them so that they always hit like a knife directly into your soul.
And I think that Guardin's also a really great decision maker as well. You mentioned being a good songwriter. I think the making this more of a strictly acoustic EP, all of that songwriting lends itself really well here, because it makes all of that clever songwriting, all of those clever lyrics really hit with the stripped background, the stripped backing music.
Right. That acoustic guitar is like a brutally perfect accompaniment to this specific album.
Also lets you really appreciate Guardin's voice, which I don't know if I had up until this point. What I'll tell you is like, it's far from perfect, and it's better for it, because you sort of really grow to really enjoy like the inflections being like slightly off or maybe intentionally off. And I walk away again acknowledging that like Guardin's not the best vocalist in the world, but like, man, do I hang on to every single word that they sing.
That being said, their flow is strong. Like they're very good at
100%.
stringing a verse together in a way that like the melodies are just gorgeous. But I agree with you, because you know who I thought about when I was listening to this? And I don't think they sound similar, but I feel like their voices exist in the same sort of like emotion first, perfection second type universe is From First to Last and Emily. Because I always think back to like Sonny Moore's vocal delivery just like really excelling in its imperfections.
Right.
Because it felt more
genuine.
Yeah, not only genuine, but it felt more important that the artist communicate like emotionally how they felt with the sound of their voice versus delivering a really clean singing voice, right? Which I think is like a lot of like what emo felt like it was built off to begin with, right? It was like its imperfections helped it shine, right? And I think Guardin is kind of a little bit far away from that, maybe at the very least because the production nowadays is just significantly better than it'll ever be. And I think that the fact that Guardin feels like they have almost a like slight bit of a rap flow to their voice. It's in a way very, you know, it's maybe it feels slightly harder for them to just feel like it's a little less just singing, right? It feels like Guardin is doing a little bit more, right? And I think they're a little better in that sense. So it's
it's storytelling too. So like part of
it's
it
like
is
a
that
soft
performance.
imperfection, because like I do really like Guardin's voice, but you're right. They're just very good at like emotionally conveying the feeling that they're trying to get across in a song, right?
But that's what I mean too. It's like, so you pair that with the fact that like you can really pull those vocals more than ever now with how stripped back the music is, but like it's better for that reason on top of it is what I'm trying, like that's the point I'm trying to get across here. Do you have a favorite track on here?
Yeah.
For me, it's
and
easily Contortionist.
Interesting.
Right in the middle, clean like minute 10, 20-second track.
I have no strong argument against any song as a favorite on here, but I pulled lyrics specifically from It Lives Where I Live because I thought they were so tragically beautiful. And it's about ostensibly someone who wants to take their own life, but the way that it's conveyed through this song as not being strong enough to do it themselves, so putting them in a situation where somebody else can do it for them, just resonated with me in such a like deep, disturbing way. And you get towards the end of the song and you get the lines, blue lights flash in the distance, red light stop, I don't listen, projectiles from a piston, couldn't do it by myself, need assistance, pink matter painted onto the concrete, think of the gunshot as the downbeat, red dot beamed on my forehead, this'll be a night you won't forget. And I was just like floored.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's like some of the favorite, absolute best songwriting I've heard all year.
One with the Decore's got some similar lines, or not similar lines, but like some
Even
equally
in its
as strong
song title,
songwriting.
it has like
Yes.
such a beautiful like resonance to
the
it.
way that those specific words, that line is incorporated into the actual song. Yeah, I was super...
One with the decor, fade into the background. Like you can one for one what they're
Yes.
conveying with the sentence without them actually saying it in any way.
I really enjoyed this project. I think it's, for me personally, it's probably the first Guardin project to really resonate with me. But like before it, now I was sort of like watching and admiring how much you really enjoyed this artist, and now it's really starting to click for me personally.
I think it's their best. I really liked Creature, but I think it was a little bit more hit and miss, and I adored Things Could Be Worse, but I think I adored more so the conceptual nature of Things Could Be Worse and how it told a story. This, for me, feels like it's the perfect encapsulation of everything I've liked about Guardin.
I like it.
I thought this was perfect. This is a 5 for me.
5.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of the best things I've heard all year.
Okay, I'm a little cooler on this one. Don't get mad at me, but this is
No, I expected you to
4.
be. Yeah.
It's probably a 4 for me, but I really liked it. Guardin fucking rules. Go check this out. Go check out every artist that we reviewed this week, and I think we're ready to head into the news, Sam.
The news.
Of Mice and Men have returned with their new single, War Paint. And announced their new album, Tether, dropping on October 6th through Sharptone. Aaron Pauley, vocalist on the new record. With this one, we weren't really focused on how it sounded as much as we focused on how it felt. And that's a weird thing to do when all you're working with is sound. But that was really the goal. And we walked away from it making it feeling like we've accomplished that. And then one additional note, the album art for this, which if people haven't seen it, are ink splotches, was created by Valentino Artiega, who's the drummer of Mice and Men, and is based off the concept of a Rorschach test. Valentino hand-painted tons of these. These are Aaron Pauley's words. Then digitized them, and the one we chose, the cover that spoke to everyone.
I really like this as album art.
I you know, it's an interesting place to start, but like, I do also really love, like, they've kind of sold me more on this record with the thought process that went into the album art than anything else they've done. Like,
Well-
even like more so than like the song or their description of the album.
Well,
It's like the
I thi-
consideration put into the album artwork almost speaks about how much pride they have in this.
For me, it's sort of a combination of both, where it's the consideration of the album artwork, and I actually really like Aaron's explanation on the approach to writing this record, where it was more of like we're gonna go off vibes. And for me, when I hear something like that, I'm gonna be like, okay, so this one's more open to interpretation, which is why in turn I really like Valentino's artwork on this one, because obviously the whole thing with like that ink splot test or whatever is that is open to interpretation. Like, I look at this artwork, and for me, it's something entirely different than what you might see it as.
Right.
And
so
granted,
it's-
we've seen this kind of art before in the scene. Dead Rabbits probably being the best example of it, where it's specifically intended to look like a fucking rabbit. So it's like, it's a little more on the nose, but
right, but the idea is that like you could look at this record and have a different emotional reaction to it than somebody else, right?
yeah.
What was your emotional reaction to the first single?
Solid start.
Solid start.
Not my favorite of Mice and Men song. I actually don't think I enjoy this song as much as most of the material that we got off of the last record, but I'm not sweating it. Again, it's not a bad song by any means. I do enjoy it. I just don't have that same, doesn't elicit the exact same emotion, the exact same excitement as some of the material off that record did.
I will say this. I think of Mice and Men sound significantly more comfortable than they ever had in the past.
That's it.
And I remember the growing pains of integrating Aaron into the band and as the
And then transitioning
singular frontman.
Right, well, transitioning from Austin Carlisle to just Aaron Pauley, and obviously, they didn't quite get it right just from that first album. It took a couple, and I think they really got it right on the last one, and now it's like they're operating at a level where that's all second nature now. Like, it doesn't really... They don't have to think about how they're all going to work together. It's just... This is obviously the band now. We're like 3-4 albums in together as this unit, and it all comes naturally. And at this point, at the base level, it's all going to sound pretty solid.
And ultimately, I look at this song and I kind of agree with you. I go, this doesn't quite feel as strong as some of the singles from the last album, but it feels like it would fit comfortably on the last album.
Yeah.
Which is a record I'm quite fond of. Now, that being said, when I say the last record, I'm sort of trying to parse. There was the full length, but then we got 3 EPs that ended up being
That's what I
combined
mean.
into a full length.
Because it's that. Because it was Echo, I think, was what it was called.
Right. And I think it's almost sort of hard to compare the approach here with like going into this album with like a lead single versus essentially just sort of like getting piecemeal one song every couple of weeks the last couple of years as they were releasing that new material. But I almost go back an album further than that, right?
So it's funny you mentioned that too. So that album being Earth and Sky.
Yeah.
If anything, this reminds me of what was essentially the first lead single off of that one. I forget the name,
Mushroom
but it
Head, was it?
Mushroom Cloud.
Mushroom Cloud, yeah.
Similar vibe to that one, where I sit and I'm like, not my favorite, but solid. And then by the time that album's over and done with, I'm like, okay, that fits great on this album. And then I like these other 2 songs the most, where they took the most amount of risk.
It's a strange feeling in me that I feel like this feels like a follow-up to Earth and Sky, whereas Echoes felt like a fun in-between, even though I think that album was sort of like incredible. I remember we had like a really strong debate about that making the top 20.
Yeah. So I'm curious.
It was like the year we turned our back on metalcore, so it was like that and a lot of other really good
That
albums just
Silent
sort of got
Planet
like
just
chopped. Yeah.
Fucking Red Weddings. For
Yeah,
no
precisely.
Reason. I don't know. I don't think that record, I don't think it was a victim of the times, but part of me, the more I think back on it, thinks maybe, hey, maybe it was 2021. Obviously releasing EPs because maybe we don't know how well we're going to be able to tour some of this material.
I think it was a combination of that and a lot of bands experimenting with how to commercialize and market music moving forward, right? There was one other sort of piece of news that was tied to this, which is that Of Mice and Men are going to be supporting Bullet for My Valentine this fall alongside Vended. How'd you feel about that tour?
It's actually a quietly great tour.
Feels weirdly strong. I think it's been long enough where I haven't seen Of Mice and Men or Bullet for My Valentine. Plus, I've never seen Vended. That the stars are sort of aligning on this lineup in a way that's like, yeah, I can see myself checking this one out.
Well, and on that note, like I was thinking when the last time we saw Mice and Men was, and it had to have been with Carlisle. I don't think we've ever seen...
Because I think it was Warped Tour, and I agree with you. I believe it was. And no, I don't think we've ever seen them solely with Aaron Pauley. So you're right. There's that aspect as well.
Obviously, there was like 2-3 years there in the middle where like that wasn't going to happen. But like...
Sure.
I don't know, right? Like, I can't think of any time that we've seen them. It's just Aaron is the vocalist. But I'm really excited at the prospect of finally being able to say that we have.
Agreed.
So... solid tour.
Marcus, Hands Like Houses parted ways with longtime vocalist Trenton Woodley. Trenton broke the news through a statement on his personal Instagram. I think there's a lot of important context and interesting tidbits in the entirety of the statement, so I'm going to read all of it. I'm going to ask that you do not interrupt, but let me finish and keep in the back of your mind things you'd like to discuss, okay?
I'm gonna try to make a hand like a house in the meantime.
Okay. These are Trenton's words. It breaks my heart to say, but my time with Hands Like Houses has come to an unexpected end. I'm still sorting through some very mixed emotions, but ultimately I've accepted that there's a future of Hands Like Houses that I'm not a part of and wish the band success in however they choose to pursue it. I've included some further context for those it matters to. Thank you to all who have made this chapter of my life possible. Over the years, differences of perspective in how we create and operate have inevitably slowed us down. Always believed those differences made us more deliberate, more patient, and more confident when things ultimately came together. But even healthy friction is still friction. Wholeheartedly, I accept a share of responsibility for some of the dysfunctions. It's a natural part of being in something you care about for as long as we all have. But I've been unexpectedly singled out by the rest of the band as the necessary change to move forward. As a new dad, I completely acknowledge that my priorities have led me to pursue and maintain a more stable and sustainable career outside of music to support my family. Neither parenting nor my day job precluded me from continuing to contribute creatively, but I'd be dishonest to suggest it had no impact whatsoever on my ability to commit the kind of time and energy the band seemed to expect of me in reaching this decision. For those reasons, I've made my peace with the idea that there's a future for Hands Like Houses that I'm not a part of. I always saw Hands Like Houses as more the sum of its parts belonging to all of us and none of us, but that never meant any of us were disposable. I asked for an opportunity to tie up some loose ends creatively and play some final shows for closure for myself, family, friends, and fans alike, and in the process help smooth the transition for everyone. It seemed sensible, respectable, and mutually beneficial way to close this chapter. The answer was no. I don't expect anyone to pass judgment on my behalf. However, the band continues. I wish them success. But it feels unfair to myself and to anyone that cared about who we are as individuals making up the whole not to express my sadness at the suddenness and totality of this change. Given recent circumstances and the nature of social media, I also need to state categorically and definitively that I am not the subject of the unfounded allegations referred to in our statement made in July of last year. Acknowledging this is only to prevent speculation and not intended to suggest or imply any misconduct by any member of Hands Like Houses, past or present. I continue to stand by both that statement and the process by which it came about, and want to deeply, humbly, and wholeheartedly thank the many people who shared with me their vulnerability, expertise, and personal experiences. Your insight and compassion guided every decision we made along the way. To anyone that has supported us and our music to date, thank you for making everything not just possible, but a defining element of who I am. I will forever be grateful for the experiences I've had over the last 14 years. Music will still be part of my life, but what shape that takes will take time and healing to discover. At least I'm looking forward to the journey. Thank you for the opportunity to be seen, heard, and appreciated. It means more to me than you could ever say.
So what's your gut reaction to this one?
I think that I am at a stage in my fandom of this project where I was not as shattered as I might have been had it happened in a different era of the band. Respectfully, right?
Yeah.
Hands Like Houses are a project that's been around for a long time, and their popularity has ebbed and flowed. And ultimately, in the last few years, for reasons both mentioned here and because of the pandemic, I think that this band sort of fell out of the popular conversation in a way that this feels like the biggest news I've seen from Hands Like Houses in years. And even though it's negative news and I'm not thrilled about it, I think I'm at a point, like I said, where I'm willing to accept it. Now, there's a lot of little tidbits in here, like small bits and pieces that, like, I guess are maybe a little more pushing me one way or the other in terms of like my emotional like resonance to this overall like departure. But like just at the top, like I guess I'm sad to see essentially this era of Hands Like Houses just be over and know that I'm not going to get more new songs with Trenton as a frontman. But I also feel like there are parts of me that I'm comfortable with this coming to an end because I feel like I've had been able to experience this band for so many years now, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel like this is a project that at the height of their popularity has a sudden like crack in the foundation and I have to completely change my expectations for them moving forward. Like this is a case where in a strange way, this almost feels like it could operate as Hands Like Houses have broken up. Because it kind of does feel that way to me.
Yeah, it's funny because prior to this, like, I had just lost any and all investment that I had in this band. But then all of like the love and admiration I had for this act sort of came flooding back into me while I was reading this statement.
Yeah.
And I realized like, oh man, you know what? I've always really loved this band, and I think it's one of those acts
like it's
where,
hard
like,
not to feel a little sad, right?
Yeah, it's one of those acts where like there really hasn't been a lot of bands like Hands Like Houses over the years. They really had some of my favorite music to ever come out of this scene. Like I can credit some of the material to them. Like Unimagine, of course, has songs like A Fire on the Hill, I'm pretty sure is what it was called. Antarctica on that debut record. They even had a couple of songs on their latest record, even though we all had sort of mixed feelings about that one. There was still some of their best material on it. So, like, even though 2 days ago, if you asked me how I felt about Hands Like Houses, knowing that, like, Trenton was still in the band, they haven't been as active, music hasn't been quite as good as it had been in the past, whatever, right? But like now knowing Trenton's gone and then remembering how much I've loved that band over the year, like years, like
anything else, it feels like an aspect of like it's almost like a growing up thing where you feel like a piece of your childhood. Like every time one of these bands that like you've spent your whole life listening to ends, it's like it's almost like a reminder of like where you're at your age and like how long we've been listening to these projects and stuff like that. So there is levels of sadness.
But there are levels in general to this because you talk about this band ending, but they're really only ending right now anyway, as we knew them, because apparently they're moving forward with someone else on vocals.
And I'm always, weirdly open to whatever a project chooses to do moving forward, right? Like, assuming that, like, there does feel like an aspect, like at least some level of bad blood here. But that being said, you know, Trenton does state multiple times that he wishes nothing but the best for the band, right?
Part of this too, I mean, I sort of liked sort of the transparency, calling out how Hands Like Houses always felt like more than the sum of their parts, and it never felt like any of the members were expendable, because honestly that does not seem to be the case in a lot of the artists that we discuss in this scene. Like, it always felt like maybe people in bands didn't
Expendable.
always feel that way about each other, right? So it's nice to see like
Right.
one instance in where it was like that vulnerability and that honesty was a little refreshing.
I think what's tragic is that, you know, you kind of make a statement like that on the end of finding out that it's almost not necessarily the case.
Yeah. And then obviously it hurts to see wanting to end this, like, you know, the couple of like final shows as the band as we knew them, and then being told explicitly no, that wouldn't happen. And it's like, man, what felt like what could have been just a really cut and dry, man. I know we mentioned that obviously this band has a couple of allegations that they've made a statement on, whatever.
They have a singular allegation they've made a statement on. Yeah.
Yes. Good correction. But
At least that I'm aware of.
aside from that, it's important to note that this band has had pretty much zero controversy over the entirety of their career. And now this is like the second time they've had any controversy, where it's like just how weirdly messy this is. And Trenton does a good job of sort of taking it in stride, but like a few details on here really don't make me feel great.
I mean, there is certainly a level of, there is a ongoing legal something or another happening that demands I say specifically as general a statement about the situation as possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Understandable. That's why, in a sense, why I say I'm open to what this band could do moving forward. I think internally, with what's sort of been brought to the surface again in this statement, with the additional aspect of the fact that it's addressing overall the fact that Trenton is no longer the frontman, it is hard not to feel like, in my personal like heart of hearts, this is a Hands Like Houses is finished statement. And I'd almost wish it was explicitly that, and it maybe could have just been a farewell to the project, and then maybe I'd almost feel much better about it.
Well, with full due respect to every member of this band, Trenton's obviously the face of it, clearly the voice of it, and I struggle personally to look at what that looks like. Like, what does a Hands Like Houses without Trenton Woodley look like? I don't know, because I never thought there was a reality without that. You
Right.
know?
And it might look like something, but right now ultimately I think of this statement more as a very much an end to this project. Whether it's the case in actuality. Unimagine is probably one of my favorite records to ever come out of the scene, personally. I absolutely adore it.
Yeah.
Polaris have dropped new single Nightmare of their upcoming album Fatalism, which releases September 1st on Sharp Tone Records.
What does it mean to be a captive in the confines of your mind? What does it mean to be a hostage to the enemy inside?
This is the second single/video for the upcoming release following Inhuman from earlier this summer. This is the first of two videos being released that will feature the final performances of late guitarist Ryan So. The band gave the following statement. It has been a challenging and very emotional task to complete these videos in light of what has happened, but after careful discussion with his family, we collectively felt that we wanted to share with the world the final things that Ryan created with us. We will proudly cherish the memories of him contained in this footage and hope you will too. I think the thing that you sort of have to acknowledge with just about everything Polaris is going to do moving forward is that there's going to be a sort of tinge of sadness that exists throughout the promotion of this record, in seeing this band perform live and releasing music videos that were obviously filmed prior to Ryan's passing. And so it makes sort of any news that comes from this this band's camp sort of like bittersweet. You know what I mean? So it's like we have this moment where it's like, hey, are you excited for the new album from Polaris? It's like, it's hard to really bring that tone to a conversation about this project right now, where it's like, yes, I am, but I am with like this caveat that it sort of exists in like a universe where we're, attempting to cherish the memory of an individual who sadly and very tragically passed away at a young age.
Yeah, you can truly see our excitement for this record 2 months ago when this record was first announced and we got that first single and the first taste of what this record was going to be. And yeah, it is important to acknowledge
the energy in the room is very different now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where now it's going to linger for a bit, right? Like the energy is going to be off for a while. It certainly hurts. It hurts more being a fan of this band and not appreciating how talented Ryan was, and now appreciating that after his passing, and then seeing Ryan in this video, and it's like that is for fans certainly going to have an impact. Obviously with the band as well. I don't know. I'm still super excited about this one, but now like the energy is super duper off, obviously, and
right. In a way that it's like I would just come in here and I would talk about a metalcore song, but it's weird to talk about it in any way that like it's like I can't just table in the back of my mind like everything
you can't
that
not
like,
acknowledge
is surrounding
it. Yeah.
this band, right? So all that being said, they dropped a music video with this as well, which feels very much larger than life. And it's essentially a lot of the band's performance in what feels like a real space, alongside a lot of technical graphics that feel like they're conveying sort of the overall tone that this band is sort of getting across, right? I think when I'm watching this video, I really like the thought process behind it in the way that you pointed out explicitly that the band existing in a real space and not feeling like they are being transposed onto like fake worlds and fake universes and stuff like that helps it feel much more real in a way that really benefits it, right?
Yeah,
because I think I'm very much tired of like 4 metalcore guitarists playing on like a forlorn planet with like asteroids falling in the background that we've gotten a lot of.
The same pose and the same darkness, all that. Like, yeah,
there's just like a disconnect between like watching their performance with this green screen like nonsense happening behind them and like some particle smoke effects.
Yeah, Polaris does a good job of literally going outside and touching grass, and on the topic of like standing still or whatever, like they might be doing that, but at least they're getting really creative with the way that we are filming it. So like you have a couple of cool drone shots of the thing sort of flying around and darting around, and it keeps the shots lively. But then you also do have some of that Unreal Engine stuff that pull you out of the video a little bit.
Yeah, with budget constraints in mind, I think that moving forward, there's a real opportunity to sort of like push a little harder on that integration between the two, because, in a sense, it's like you're seeing a thing, but it doesn't feel like you're experiencing it. So I have a band looking into the distance as like asteroids hit the fucking face of the earth.
Yeah,
but
not,
it's
not
like
2, not 3, but like 3 dozen.
the stillest camera work you've ever seen in your, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like there are little ways that I think you can really help sell that the band exists in the same universe that everything is happening, even though we understand that very obviously it is not, right? I don't think I quite liked Nightmare as much as Inhuman, but I do feel like that this band is definitely like settling into a groove here, and I'm excited to hear this next single.
Yeah.
Dying Wish dropped their new single, Watch My Promise Die, and announced a new album, Symptoms of Survival, which releases November 3rd on Sharptone Records. Vocalist Emma Boster had this to say on the new track. Watch My Promise Die is written about the overwhelming anxiety of predestined failure. When you commit everything you have to one area of your life, the idea of it falling apart looms with such heavy importance. The song is written from the perspective of toying with that fear, allowing your weakness to overcome before you lose everything in a means outside of your control.
Back half of this year belongs to Sharptone.
Yeah, it really feels that way now, doesn't
Polaris,
it? Right?
Mice and Men, Dying Wish. That is a good fucking lineup.
Oh, it really was a coming out party for Sharptone this week, huh?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that.
I don't know if they had like an earnings report or something and they had to get right, but...
All right, we had to announce everything for the following quarter. I understand.
Well, I mean, I think Polaris has been out there. Obviously, like that date's been out there for
Sure,
a bit. But
sure.
Mice and Men and Dying Wish are some good additions to the end of the calendar year.
Starting to flesh it out. Starting to see the finish line.
This is a great second single
Yep.
for this record, for this new Dying Wish album. I'm feeling really great about everything here. November 3rd, this new video's as watchable as the last one was.
I mean, if there's one thing that this band is doing exceptionally well, it's capturing aesthetic, whether it be in their music videos or the album art for this, which very much captures the tone of something that would have dropped between the years of like 2003 and 2008. It's a very beautiful, nostalgic looking metalcore artwork. The kind of thing that would resonate with you the moment you saw it, as knowing exactly what genre it was and knowing almost instinctively the album without even seeing the artist name, you know, that kind of thing. It's the kind of thing where it captures an era very well, and I do appreciate that. I like that this band has so well considered their image moving forward, alongside of their overall sound, which I think continues to sort of capture, once again, like a very specific era of MySpace metalcore meets deathcore era.
The idea of committing everything you have in one area of your life, or to one area of your life, feels like that's sort of a direct...
It honestly feels almost too real.
Right, well...
I don't want to think about it too much, you know what I mean?
Well, it feels like sort of a not so subtle way of like highlighting like the
amount of energy you put into your artistic projects.
Right.
Like we're talking about the band
involved.
in theory,
Yeah.
right? Like if we try to like attach this statement to what we think it could mean, right? Though in theory it could capture a million different things. If we were to look at it as Dying Wish saying, hey, we've put our whole heart and soul into this project with the hopes that like it's successful, then it kind of gives this like secondary life to the song, right?
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, it really excels in that way. Hawthorne Heights released a heavy new single, Marcos. It's called The Storm.
Tripped up right till we're not even friends. They'll see us burn for what? I lost a storm inside of me. The war at home is never ending, always never ending.
And it's off the upcoming EP, Lost Lights, which drops September 8th on Pure Noise Records. Vocalist JT Woodruff had this to say about the new song. The storm was right in the middle of the night, deep in the throes of a worldwide shutdown as I locked myself in a crimson red cabin in rural Ohio. Brace yourself, there's a lot of very colorful language in describing this track. I needed to withdraw from the noise in a world where everything was falling apart. No internet, no cable, no cell phone service. You truly had to be prepared for that type of silence. If you aren't comfortable inside your own head, the silence can swallow you whole. I welcomed it. I let the calm and quiet slowly drag me under. The only sound I could hear was the gentle roar of a creek that was behind the cabin, knifing through the desperate forest that I was purposefully lost in. It came to me as I was staring into the fire that was raging in the old-timey wood-burning hearth. I tossed another log into it and noticed how quickly it turned to embers, and how long it took for the embers to smolder from orange to black. Within the darkest black, I saw what seemed to me like a bright future. I felt myself letting go of things that I didn't realize that I was hanging onto, and I immediately felt relief. To me, like a bright future. I saw what seemed like a bright future. I felt myself letting go of things that I didn't realize that I was hanging onto, and I immediately felt relief. I realized that I needed to set a fire inside of myself and burn it down. I imagined what it would be like to stand on the ridge that was overlooking the cabin and see the most beautiful fire, that my eyes could register the deepest orange of 1,000 Halloweens. The war at home is never ending.
These would all have been better lyrics than what are on the song.
All right, calm down. The band is also playing in support of the emo orchestra, which is the thing I don't even know what the fuck that is, this fall. I think they literally just invented it, and they're going on a headlining tour.
Talk about inventing things. This band, this singer just invented the name of the next Motionless in White album, which is The Deepest Orange of 1,000 Halloweens.
Deepest Orange of 1,000 Halloweens. Nuts. Right, coming Friday the 13th, this October. Okay.
Listen, who would have thought the heaviest singles of the week would have come from both Dying Wish and Hawthorne Heights?
All right, well, let's come back a little bit from that statement here. I thought it was interesting to sort of like bill this as the heaviest Hawthorne Heights song, because it certainly didn't feel that way to me. I mean, it did in a sense that, like, you know, maybe our guitars are a little crunchier than they have been recently, but like overall, I feel like this band's brand of screamo felt a lot heavier than this sort of light metalcore that I feel like we're getting here. Though it is interesting to see a band like Hawthorne Heights sort of come out in the year 2023 and be like, we're heavier than ever, because part of me is like, I don't know who's asking for this, but the other part of me is like, well, I like that you guys do feel like passionate about going one way or the other, right? Because I think like just another like set of like Hawthorne Heights songs,
you
like
toe
that
the
last
line
album,
again.
right? It's like, I do like that we're sort of like pushing to one end of the spectrum and being like, we're committing to this, right? And we'll see how much of the EP is that. But like, let's say in theory, this will be their heaviest project ever. Now, I don't know what the fuck is going on with all the lore for this song and how it came to be. It's like, yeah, like in a sense, I think it's like a really fun way of explaining it. Like, it's a lot funner than most of these that I read, right?
Somehow it actually makes me appreciate the song a lot more.
A little more.
It's a man, credit where credit's due. It's a really great explanation for a song.
I mean, I just like that this band is bringing almost like Alisana energy to this project now, in a sense that it feels like there's this dark conceptual nature to what has happened and how we've gotten here, right? That feels like it bleeds outside of just the album.
As you were reading it, I was thinking to myself, like, Spencer Charnas is going to get this guy on the phone. They're going to combine and write a book soon.
Right, precisely. Ice Nine Kills already have a book coming out, funny enough.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, hey, my guy's an
Right, the
author.
sequel.
We just sold out a Barnes & Noble signing. Like, it's happening.
Right, precisely.
Author
correct.
era. It's upon us.
All that being said, my overall issue here is that I was a little lukewarm on the song.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's not great. I think part of the issue is that the performance aspects of this music video don't do a phenomenal job of selling it. The band's presence feels a little flat overall in a way that I think was a little frustrating, because this feels like one of those cases where I think had I listened to the song and not watched the music video, I would have been a little more sold on it. And then the video would have just been like a fun accompaniment. But because I watched the video first, I felt almost too lost in the band's like overall performance. And there are aspects of the video I really like. I think aesthetically it's really neat, and it's got some really cool shots set up, and overall like the setting is really well constructed, but a lot of the way that this band just presents themselves, it just doesn't have the punch that most heavy bands have. And you watch this video like directly after the Dying Wish video, which has a real raw, like nasty performance energy to it, and that's where you go, oh yeah, you know, this is heavy bands in the year of 2023,
and then
right?
this one's just not capturing that energy.
Hawthorne Heights feels like they're slightly playing in a field that's like outside of their depth. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's to their benefit. But that being said, it's like an okay song. I'm really curious about this project for a lot of different ways, but I didn't love everything that happened here. Victims dropped their brand new track Stranger and announced new album Volume 5, The Hurt Collection. Arriving Friday, the 13th of October. The band is also supporting Paleface on their fall tour alongside Enterprise Earth and Crown Magnetar. Heavy, fucking insanely heavy lineup.
Heavy lineup.
Victims rounding it out well with this new track, which I thought was one of the most fascinating songs I heard all week. Just almost weirdly unlike anything else I listened to, and also not entirely like the Victims that I thought I had come to know. And it felt like a band who looked at everything every other band was doing and said, can we take all of those things and make them a little more interesting and combine them in a way that helps us stand apart? And I think they did a really good job of it.
Yeah, as a result, I think for me, you end up having the best Victims song they've written. Really happy with this one. I think that it's very unconventional. It's one of the more unconventional songs that we discussed this week, for sure.
This is brazenly that underground nu metal we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And I think this band does it exceptionally well.
Video's really watchable as well. You've got
The video's very familiar.
Yeah, well, it's like
Mostly.
It's the first time we've seen rain really coming down on a band in a while, and
Sure.
man, does that hit still.
You're right. It's almost like it's a timeless classic, right?
And they threw like just enough at it to keep it interesting. Like
Sure.
you've got a lot of cool shots where your singer is the reflection is singing back at us, but the actual person
Two vocalists
is
for what it's
not
worth.
singing. Right, but the one vocalist in the mirror reflection shots,
Mm.
and then you have their head turned, but like the reflection's not actually doing anything that the person's doing. It's just a very eerie video. And then you have both vocalists like smearing blood on their face, and other parts of the video it's very dark, very wet video. You've got the rain coming down. It's a blast to watch.
You could argue it's very
honestly.
metal. It's an extremely metal
Yeah,
video.
but it's done very well, and it's done, I don't know, like taste for the most part. Like I mentioned blood, but it's not like a really explicit thing by any means. It all just seems very tasteful. I don't know.
The idea of describing like a metalcore video as tasteful is such a fascinating idea to me, but I'm kind of in alignment with you. It's almost like somebody like remade like a classic film and it just felt like a tribute. So it's almost like Victims feel like they're doing like a tribute to the genre with this video in that sense. And you're right. They do it in a really respectful
That's what I
and
mean. Like there's a couple of gross things happening here. Like you've got like blood and you've got creepy, eerie reflections and stuff like that. But like, I don't know. I don't watch this video and get like grossed out by anything.
Yeah, it's a light, comforting grossness. Concrete Castles have given us new single "Kill the Lights." And announced that new album, Brand New Me, hits August 25th through Velocity Records. This band's going to be supporting Icon for Hire on the Emo Dreams tour, starting this September alongside Conquer Divide and The Funeral Portrait.
I need this tour to like meet up for one date with that emo orchestra Hawthorne Heights thing.
You know, I feel like we didn't talk about any of these three tours. Let me get a quick tour ranking from you. Emo Orchestra headliner with support from Hawthorne Heights. Paleface Swiss headliner with support from Enterprise, Crown Magnetar, and Victims. And the Emo Dreams tour, Icon for Hire headlining with Conquer Divide, Funeral Portrait, and Concrete Castles.
We caught Victims live once, and I remember being extremely impressed. And the fact that they're on the same bill as a Paleface right now, and that Crown Magnetar album was really good.
At 1.
Enterprise Earth fucking rock. That's at 1.
We didn't review that Crown Magnetar album, but yeah, it was good.
And then you forget Funeral Portrait are fucking back. And Conquer Divide have been on their fucking... They've been on the fucking grind. They're up next in news as well. Concrete Castle sound fucking solid. That's number 2.
Dropping Emo Orchestra down at the bottom, huh?
And then I don't know what the fuck Emo Orchestra is.
I don't know.
It's fascinating.
The poster was like emo songs, like you've never heard them before, with strings.
Orchestral, right.
Right. And
so, like, part of me thinks...
Whatever, fucking face down in the... you know what I mean? Like, I guess that
could be amazing. It could be amazing, but
I don't know.
I would need to see the hype before I believe the hype.
I guess I have the same feeling of it overall as I do like Emo Night, where it's just like, have fun, y'all. It's just like a not for me thing.
Yeah, it's not
right.
Yeah.
Like, enjoy yourselves.
Dance your heart out.
Right. Like, they're
Sing
playing
along.
"Lying Is the Most Fun a Girl Can Have" without taking her clothes off. We know
Yeah.
that track. It's fun. All right. Rewind. Concrete Castles have given us new single "Kill the Lights." What do you think of this track?
It's one of my favorite Concrete Castle songs. Definitely, admittedly, like a band I'm not as familiar with as many of the ones we've discussed so far on the show, but this one sticks out really
Hot up
well.
and coming project.
Yeah.
Very hot up and coming project.
Strong chorus on this one.
Big
Video's
hook.
a lot of fun. Video's a ton of fun. It's just a band having fun at home. We're playing Uno a little bit.
Sure.
We're all, playing instruments we shouldn't be playing. The drummer's on vocals.
They do
the
this
singer's
move-
on drums.
They do this move in the video, right? Exactly what you just said, where the camera cuts and like comes back and like, of the 3 members, they've like swapped places, right?
And
Vocals
we do it
playing
like
drums,
10 different shots. So like we're
Right.
just doing a lot of that.
drummers on guitar, guitarist is singing. I think it's something. It's crazy to me when I see a small band do something that I then need to see every other band in the scene like. How fun would it be to kick to a video of a project that maybe you have a stronger familiarity with, and everyone is like switched up positions, right?
Yeah. It
To me, it's very fun sounding. I think Concrete
It's a
Castle
lot of
stumbled
fun.
upon a brilliant idea, whether they were the first to do it or not. It's the first time I've ever actually paid attention long enough to realize someone had done it.
it's a novel idea.
They also play a clip of "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia" before the video, which I think is like a really
It's
fun, novel thing
brave.
to do. Yeah, big hooks, strong tour. Optimistic about Concrete Castles. Final story this week, Marcos. Speaking of that tour, Conquer Divide have released their new single, "New Heaven." It's off the upcoming new album Slow Burn, which drops September 8th. The band had this to say about the new track and video. New Heaven was born out of the idea that you'll never be satisfied with what you have if you don't define your expectations. We got together in Atlanta with Johnny Andrews for this one, and he's a musical mad scientist. We played with religious metaphors, although the song is not about religion. You throw your whole life into something, and then you finally reach the pinnacle and get to pull a proverbial curtain back, but it's not what you expected at all. So now you need a new high to chase. We did crowdsourced gang vocals on this one, and it was fun to make it come together. And the video was sort of a continuation from our last music video, where in the opening scene, you see the Grim Reaper take the hood off to reveal he is now the priest overseeing the funeral. Kia, vocalist, figuratively went to heaven and came back after realizing heaven wasn't what it was cracked up to be. How bad's heaven? You got to come back to Earth. That's a fucking phenomenal question. The fucking state of the world right now. How fucked does heaven have to be where you're like, fuck it, nah, Earth.
Listen, the song is good, and then when those crowdsourced gang vocals come in, that's when it really
That's when it like pulled, like that's when it fully like
Yes.
pulled my attention inwards. I think what the song made me realize is how I've really sort of not given Kia their flowers as a vocalist. There is almost like a deep register to their voice that gives them I think you called it almost like a country rock sensibility
this
to like their
song's
sound.
got a bit of like a country rock edge to it in a really nice way, honestly.
Yeah, in a way that really works, right? Not in a way that feels like it dumbs down anything that Conquer Divide is doing. It feels like it gives them a new aspect to their personality that I didn't know they had before. And it feels like this record is starting to get fleshed out and become really much more interesting, and suddenly like it's really cemented itself on the calendar, and I'm looking forward to it. And the visual style for this video is absolutely gorgeous. I think the sort of like neon cross in like this darkly lit church, it has almost like this new wave meets like old-timey vibe to it that I think is really like strangely compatible with one another.
Good aesthetic in the video for sure.
Yeah. This was really strong overall, and it made me maybe the most excited I've been for this upcoming album. This was the single that kind of sold me.
Yeah, Slow Burn shaping up to be a pretty promising record.
That was a week, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said, thumbs up if you watch on YouTube, 5 stars if you're listening on a podcast app. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week.
Good fucking play.